A very interesting question has come in today, and it's this: what tips can you give us for hooking into people's sensory preferences, visual, audio, tactile, etc. in presentations? Fantastic question. I'm really glad you've asked. What you've described there is something that's known as VAK, VAK, and that stands for visual, auditory, kinaesthetic, which means tactile. And this is a learning modality, and it doesn't apply so much to public speaking. It applies to training and teaching, which are quite different. And I'll make that differentiation for you. When we're training or teaching people, there have to be outcomes at the end, and you have to know what those outcomes are, and they need to be measurable. So when you're training somebody, for example, in use of a software package, clearly there are learning outcomes at the end of that process, so that you can measure that the person has understood how to use the software correctly and is able to apply what they have learnt. Public speaking isn't necessarily like this. There aren't necessarily specific learning outcomes. There may be things that you learn. They may not necessarily be things that you need to apply or would want to apply. Some of us are motivational speakers, so it's hard to know what the exact outcome would be. It may just be that people feel inspired, want to go on and do something. Sometimes there can be outcomes that we can't predict as speakers. If people feel inspired to go on and do something or take something particular from what you've said that they can apply in their lives because it resonates with them, then fantastic, but it's quite hard as a public speaker to predict those things. So this system VAK tends not to be something that I use particularly, and there are many others like that, DISC and NLP and other kinds of systems that just don't apply particularly to public speaking. However, there is crossover, there are similarities. You will notice things in the advice I give on public speaking that have some crossover with some of these learning modalities. But I'm going to answer your question. Now, I don't train trainers, so nothing I say is aimed at people who are lecturers or who are delivering training. I'm speaking purely from the perspective as a public speaking coach who helps other people feel better about themselves as public speakers. Let's start with visual then. What's the obvious one? We'll use slides, obviously. I don't personally use slides anymore. I prefer to just be me in front of my audience. You can certainly use slides, but you can also use an object, and I'm quite keen on that. Using an object to illustrate your points and getting people to think about that object maybe in a fairly abstract way, I think is quite an interesting way to get people thinking. Power stance, you'll hear me talk about this all of the time. When you learn how to stand strongly, so your feet are planted firmly on the ground, hip width apart, and your shoulders are back, you'll be very strong, and this can communicate the qualities of leadership, I guess, to your audience. Your expression is very important as well, so we're not completely monotone and mono expression, that we're looking around at everybody feels involved and engaged with what we're saying. And also we might use placement. If any of you have done British Sign Language, you'll know how important placement is. So we can use the space in front of us to almost plant ideas when we're talking. Auditory, well, obviously our tone, the tone of voice that we use. So you can use a tone that's quite hypnotic. For example, the pace at which you speak. So some people speak really fast, other people speak a lot more slowly, and sometimes that's down to kind of just the individual's communication style. But of course, pausing can be terribly powerful when we're trying to plant ideas with people, to get people to understand us, to build that rapport with our audience. Here's a tip for you: listen to audiobooks. As you may know, I spent many years working with blind people, and audio is very, very important part of that. And blind people often listen to novels via talking books, so they listen to them rather than read them with their eyes, or indeed with braille will often listen. And those audiobooks may be read by professional actors, and it can be incredibly instructive to listen to an audiobook that's been read by a professional actor, because you will learn so much about tonality and about pausing and about how to bring drama and engagement to a piece of text. So that's something that I strongly recommend. And the final one on our VAK list is kinaesthetic, which is body movements. And this is where we start to think about gestures. However, I've seen lots of videos, for example, on YouTube with public speaking coaches suggesting what gestures you should use to convey certain ideas. Please don't. This is a huge mistake because the audiences are very good at spotting a fake, and it's really important as a speaker you are sincere. It's unimportant if you're nervous or you stumble or you make mistakes, as long as you are sincere and authentic. That's what really counts. So what I would encourage you to do is, rather than become obsessed with placing certain gestures into your talk, is to do this mental rehearsal that I've talked about many times before. So once you've decided what your presentation will be about, go somewhere on your own, no other people, no mirrors, set a timer and perform your talk in real time, and really perform it. And every time you do so, you will start to notice the gestures that you use to support what you're saying. The gestures can indeed be with your hands, but can also be with your posture, the way that you use your eyes, the way that you pause, the way that you stand. All of these things become part of your signature talk. Our signature talk isn't just about the subject, but also the way that we talk. Think about performers that you really admire and who really inspire you, and they all have certain movements, particularly rock musicians or pop singers have certain movements, and that's part of the reason we like them. It's part of their signature style. So discover what your signature style is. Do that mental rehearsal, keep doing these rehearsals, and you'll discover these things, rather than thinking, oh, I must do this at this point, which I see some public speaking trainers encourage, and I do not like it because I think it's a bit fake, and I don't think fakery has any place on the stage. So that's our visual, auditory and kinesthetic, but ultimately I would say, do what feels right for you. If it's feeling right, it's going to be the right thing.